this week here at Hockey Night Boston, to work with the younger kids and to see their enthusiasm, that energizes me. And I'm sure it's the same exact way for those NHL veterans. They get energized working with the young guys.
And, of course, a lot of this was to move money around to be able to do the things they needed to do. They were really happy with Carl Hagelin's performance since he came over from Anaheim and were able to sign him back also at a pretty good contract. So now you got a third line with Hagelin, Panic, and Lars Eller, which is a very strong third line with two of those three guys. Actually, all three can jump in to the top six if you have an injury. So a lot of interchangeable parts there.
There are a ton of skill there with that line. So that'll be fun to watch.
And on the other side with the draft, Connor McMichael from the London Knights, apparently Dale Hunter put in a good word for his player with his former NHL team, and the Caps drafted him. He's a kid that probably isn't ready for the NHL yet, but I think the interesting pick was Brett Leeson in the second round. He's an age out who's probably already talking about going to training camp, trying to make the team, and at the least playing at Hershey. Big kid, kind of a Tom Wilson-type player coming in. Coach Urgo, that's a guy I think is a sleeper to make the team this year, to be honest.
If he comes in and does what he needs to do, and he impresses, and he shows that he's willing to, like you were saying earlier about was it Bobrovsky or whatever, is fit the role that you need to fit to make the team. Don't just come in saying that this is how you're going to play and take it or leave it. Those kind of guys don't make it. It's the guys that recognize the need for a certain part on the team, fit that role, and execute. They're going to make the team.
And Leeson's from Prince Albert in the WHL right wing. I want to say he's 6'2", 210 already as a 20-year-old, so a little room to grow there. And, he's got I don't know if Tom Wilson's a role model, but certainly a great act to follow, Coach Ben, in his career and how it's panned out.
Absolutely. And the funny thing is to look back 8 or 10 years even under GM George McPhee, the Caps are loyal to the programs that they're loyal to. Like, they're very loyal to London. They're very loyal to the Western Hockey League where George McPhee came from. And you can't argue with the success that they've had. The flip side of that is for a young guy coming in who's maybe a bubble player to make the team this year. If I'm if I'm in that position as a player and I fall, quote unquote, down to Hershey, that's the best case scenario. The GM Doug Yanks down or up there in Hershey, the variety of coaches they've had over the last couple of years, you can't argue with the success they've had. That might be the best development ground in the AHL.
What I find from recruiting too, not that you have to, but if you get a few programs or organizations that you're comfortable with, you know their culture, you know the pedigree, you know the kind of person that you're getting, not only the kind of player, but the kind of person and leader that you're going to get from that organization, it's easy to continue to go back to that well. So,
looking at the NHL draft as a whole and its impact on the Caps, so you have Artemi Panarin signing with the Rangers, which a lot of people were shocked by. Whenever the Rangers sign a big name, it doesn't shock me with the money that they have. I personally think, knowing a little bit about his off-ice antics, that he might be an up-and-down player in the big city. But clearly the Rangers have made themselves better. Clearly with the signing of Bobrovsky, the Florida Panthers have done some other things and made themselves better. Is it possible? We got the Flyers also. The Flyers have signed the guy from Winnipeg. Help me out.
No, I'm not going to help you out. You know why?
Kevin Hayes.
Because you're not talking about the New Jersey Devils.
Kevin
which
Hayes
is my team.
Wait, I haven't gotten there yet. Kevin Hayes from comes over, and the Flyers signed him to a big deal. They made the trade for Matt Niskanen. The Caps maybe thought Niskanen wasn't the right fit right now for them at his age and salary, but the Flyers, on the other hand, have a young team, young defense. He's a great fit there. Again, a trade that maybe benefits both teams. And then, of course, the New Jersey Devils, 2 top draft picks over the last couple years. They bring in PK Subban, made some good signings, and obviously a great GM there in Fred Shero. So, Ray Shero. Fred's dad. So, but yeah, those teams are all markedly better. Are they playoff teams? Remains to be seen. The Metro is going to be incredibly difficult this year, but we seem to feel as a group that the Caps have done some of the right things, that they're going in a good direction. But you got to be a little worried about how good these other teams are, Coach Urgo.
Yeah, I hope to see, just in general, a closer race at the top, and maybe the whole Metropolitan Division just gets pulled together a little bit more. As a Devils fan, growing up a Devils fan, it was disappointing to see how far off we got, as well as some of the other lower level teams last year. So hopefully the conference as a whole is more competitive. We see a really good playoff run, which is always fun to watch when the last 5 to 10 games really mean something in the season. I'm excited to see how it pans out.
And, you look at Columbus as definitely taken a step back. The Islanders have taken a step back. The Penguins, it's debatable. They're kind of in the same spot that the Caps are, moving some money around and bringing in some different names. Coach Ben, I think it's I think the better teams are still going to be favored, the traditionally better teams, but I think it's a coin flip. I think some of those teams could drop out.
I think it's going to be interesting to see, like you did with PK Subban when he left Montreal and went to Nashville, the culture change that he brings to the organization. He's such an incredible person off the ice. He's loved in the community. His teammates respect him for that. And you see the change that he made to the Nashville organization and pushed them to what the Stanley Cup Finals once and the the Western Conference Finals once. They almost went to the Stanley Cup Finals twice in 3 years.
Right.
Off of his back, more or less. So it'll be interesting to see the effect, or kind of, I guess, the butterfly effect, so to speak, that he has across the Metropolitan Division.
It's not a knock on Andy Green, because he's a great defenseman and a great player, but I think sometimes a dynamic personality as a captain can gel an entire locker room together, because they're able to, and we've seen this with some of our Hockey Night in Boston guys here this week, over 4 days. They reach out and touch players that maybe are quiet or not going to put themselves in, and they create a sense of community in that locker room, which translates to the ice, at any level.
And further effect on the Caps going forward another year, you've got Panarin signing an $11 million or so contract. You've got Bobrovsky over $10 million a year. Backstrom, Holtby, what's their futures with the Caps? Personally, I think you have, if you're going to do the right thing, which they've not always been known for doing, you have to keep Nick Backstrom. I think you will get a hometown discount with him, but it's still going to be $8-9 million. Holtby, I was ready to trade Holtby a year before they won the Cup. I'm glad they didn't, but at this point, he's been a little inconsistent the last couple of years, and after the great, even the year of the great Stanley Cup run, he had lost his job toward the end of the season, and I just don't see them being able to give him that kind of money. I hate to say it, but unless, both those guys take substantial discounts, I think at least one of them's got to go.
Well, the thing is with the Caps is if history is any indication of the future, which it tends to be with the Caps in drafting and where their loyalties lie, the Caps, I think Holtby is the longest, or at least in recent memory, the longest serving starting goaltender, trading away Neuwirth, Semyon Varlamov out to Colorado, ironically. We haven't had a number one goaltender with the Caps longer than 2 or 3 seasons to get that consistency. Again, the Caps have been, probably to their credit more than their detriment, although you can argue it either way, they've been willing to make the big moves. I was totally in support of 3-4 years ago getting rid of Mike Green. It was long past due. It was the move they needed to make to kind of open up the doors and allow some of the younger defensemen to get in and get the experience without playing in shadow. And it obviously seemed to work out with the Stanley Cup Championship. So if the Caps are willing to make the big moves, sometimes that's what it takes, again, to change the culture within the team or within the locker room.
Sure, and the reason I said I was ready to trade Holtby was they had gone through yet another early playoff exit with him in goal, and he played well. It wasn't his fault, but they weren't getting anywhere with him. And, so why not try to get there with somebody else and move him, save some money, make a big signing, and fortunately they didn't, because it all worked out. And he wasn't great that year during the season, but, man, he certainly was the guy in the playoffs. And really, if you're going to get in the playoffs every year, that's all you need, the guy who's going to be able to come up big in the playoffs.
Well, and that's always kind of been long the knock on Ted Leonsis as the owner of the Caps. It was more that he was happy making the playoffs because of the bonus money and the bonus ticket sales and the bonus season ticket sales than pushing towards a championship. But honestly, if you want your number one goalie to come up big at some point, you want it to happen later in the playoffs than in the regular season. I'd much rather him have a shaky regular season, barely qualify for the playoffs, and be more well-rested.
Sure,
and that's basically what
we've
happened.
learned the regular season really doesn't matter.
Yeah, those trophies aren't important in the regular season.
There's the value of having a solid backup, though, so that you're not gassing your goalie out the whole season.
And the Caps do have a solid backup with Phoenix Copley and some young guys and Samsonov, ready to step in. The timing may be right, unfortunately. I hate to lose a character guy who everyone loves, but sometimes that's the way it's got to be. Let's get back to hockey night in Boston a little bit. Coach Urgo is somebody who's not around hockey players of this age all the time, and you're looking at usually older players getting ready to go to college. Tell me a little bit about just your thoughts on being here and what you've seen so far at the tournament.
I've had to watch my mouth. No.
No, you haven't. I've been in the locker room.
No, it's been wonderful. It's been wonderful to see kids of both 8th, 9th, 10th grade really grasping an opportunity and not only on the ice, but the opportunity off the ice to spend time with each other, to meet new players, to see things, and it brings me back. It brings me back to that age and being in hotels and playing knee hockey and playing in the pool and all those kinds of experiences that you'll remember for a lifetime. And it's translated to the ice. These guys have, I think, made some new friends this week, and it's shown. It's shown when they've had to overcome a couple being down. I remember yesterday we were down 2 goals and came back, and then we were down another goal and came back and tied the game. And it just shows the resiliency of these players, and they're really trying to make the most out of this experience, and that's impressive to me.
One of my dreams when I started DMV hockey a few years ago, when my son was playing, was I used to hate every year watching the Little Caps and Team Maryland beat up on each other, with both of them being ranked number 80 in the country or so, and you're looking at those lineups and kids who skate together in the summer, who genuinely like each other and train together and go to school together, playing against each other. We could have had a top 30 AAA team. Instead, we're both number 80, and we're not getting out of the Southeast District. Coach Ben, to me, like bringing these kids together, kids from different levels who've never played at this level and kids from different clubs, to me, that's the most fun part of it. And then just watching the locker room, how they bond so quickly in hockey. They stand up for each other. They fight for each other. Just tell me a little bit about your thoughts on, what's the best part for you about doing this?
Well, like I said earlier, in regards to kind of bringing in new blood, on an NHL team, it's that excitement of being able to open a kid's eyes, or the quote I use all the time is providing the key to the lock sometimes, giving them that little hint, that little clue, the suggestion that all of a sudden you see it in their face, like, oh yeah, that's it. That's what I've been looking for. That sort of thing. That the excitement, the wide-eyed, kind of nativity, whatever.
Naivety.
Yeah.
Naivete.
Yeah. Being naive. How about that?
It's a big word.
And them
sort of
kind of, like I said, unlocking the lock and figuring something out is so refreshing. The flip side of it is that what energizes me, and I kind of had that little tweet storm last week after the junior high mini camp. The other side of it for me is that while we can provide those little hints or clues or fix the little tiny thing in their, whatever, how they make a pass or whatever, the brains that these kids have for the game is unbelievable. We've kind of approached it more on a higher level, junior level, college level, professional level with the kids, and how we treat the kids, and how we probably to our detriment how we talk to the kids sometimes, but we treat them with that professionalism, and they respond to it so amazingly. And when you ask a question of them, most of the time they know the answer. They may not be able to perform that in the game under pressure, and that comes with maturity, and that comes with experience in the game. But the fact that they know it, I didn't know that stuff at 12 or 13 years old, and that they do know it, in regards to defensemen escaping or whatever it is. It's amazing how well these kids think the game.
And you guys have given me the opportunity to speak a couple of times in the locker room, because I try to watch the games as a scout would and give the kids feedback on maybe what I saw if I was a junior coach or a prep school coach, and the takeaways I had from the game. And I will tell you, it's a pleasure to get in there and talk and have 20 sets of eyes glued on you. No one's untaping their, throwing tape balls around. No one's looking at their phones. Like, these kids, for some of them it's brand new. And I told a couple of them, like, this is your first taste. If you want to do this, if you want to go play college hockey, you're going to be up here 100 times in the next 5 years. So this is your first taste. And, Coach Urgo, I know you've been in a lot of locker rooms with a lot of older kids, and just the respect these kids seem to have for you guys and for this whole process has been really cool for me to see.
It's awesome, and it's been great because I've been able to use Stevenson as an example for these guys and give them a little bit of a window into what it's like to be in a junior locker room or a college locker room. And to me, it's about preparing them not only to play at that level, but to be on a team at that level. Don't do little things that are going to label you as the guy who's going to get, ostracized or displaced from a cultural perspective. Be the guy that, if somebody leaves a stick on the bench, grab that